Welcome to John and James Live. My name's John Hastings with my co-host,
James CeeLo.
Mr. James CeeLo. How are you today?
I'm very well, mate. How are you? It's a beautiful sunny day.
Oh, it's absolutely stunning out there. I'm going to go for a little walk after this, I think. Get out into the sunshine off of the screen.
Get some
Today?
vitamin D, mate.
Yeah, get some vitamin D. Get out near the trees. I need some tree action.
Do you hug trees? Are you a tree hugger?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Mate,
All the
you've
time.
got to have big arms.
I don't go out enough. I'm on the screen. I'm in the virtual world, James.
Hey, you need to go hug a tree.
I'm in the virtual world. Today we're gonna go through and do a little sort of like thought experiment or visions of the future, or just highlight some trajectories of where industry is going. James, I've been doing this PDF document, which is the Future Insights, for a while now, and it just got me thinking about where all of these big experts are telling us where things are going. What's the logical trajectory of where different industries are going? And people are gonna have to they're gonna have to try and catch up, aren't they? First of all, we'll say hi Juan. How are you, sir? Juan is John.
Juan.
You know that.
So could you be Juan for today? Just
Juan.
Just
Geo.
I like it, mate.
I think
I like it.
So James,
I'll be Jacques. I'll be Jacques in French. Which is Jacques.
So we're going to kick off. So where are all of these industries going? I'm going to hit you with some industries. We're going to talk about them. If you want to talk about your industries in the audience, let us know what your industry is, and then we'll just discuss it together and think about where the trajectory's going. I keep saying that word. My brother always says I use the word trajectory way too much. And
we'll think of something different.
Something different. But it just reminds me of that. I don't know if it's the picture of, if you're just 1 millimeter off and then you keep going, you end up being miles off.
Yeah, it's the compass thing, isn't it? It starts off like that, but over a distance.
Over time.
Yeah.
You are everywhere. So we've got John West. Hey, John, how are you, sir? Mr. West. So give us your industries, guys. I know one's in the education industry. John West. Let's see what industry you're in. Give us your industry so we can discuss it. First of all, we'll talk about the health and well-being industry, because that's the industry that we've been in for a while. We started off as personal trainers, so it's really it was the fat loss industry, wasn't it? People were coming to us because they wanted to improve health and well-being. The athletes were the athletes doing their thing, but people who wanted to lose weight, feel great, look good, all of that jazz, and people are struggling, aren't they, in that sector? So James, where is that industry going? Personal training, health, fat loss. Where are we heading with this?
First and foremost, a lot of it has gone online. We've talked about this before about, the one-to-one personal training sector is very much accelerated by the pandemic. So many industries have been completely kind of deconstructed and have been revolutionized by the pandemic. I think possibly, I don't know, what the statistics are in terms of acceleration, but probably 5 years ahead of where we would have been ordinarily. So it was that pattern interrupt, I think, that everybody had to adapt. And these situations were thrust upon us. It wasn't through choice. So people had to change. And I think where you kind of pull that curtain back and you get experience of what it could be like, then a lot of people kind of initially may have been quite resistant to it, but then over time it becomes a new normal. And certainly from my experiences, a lot of people stayed online where I was going to them in person, couldn't do that through the pandemic. All of a sudden, it was more convenient to them. They didn't have to worry about tidying the house up or, making a special effort for somebody coming into their environment, that actually online they could curate the what was behind them, and that's all I see virtually. So I think there's a lot to be said for the mechanisms of automation. Certainly for me, it was less traveling, but I don't get that human connection like I did before. And then other clients did want me back, so that's kind of happened. It's a natural progression for certain people, but there's others that did want to go back to how it was before. So in answer to your question, I think, a lot of it has been automated. Lots of personal trainers going online, much more efficient. They can do one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one. And certainly social media has played a huge part in that people can then get that level of exposure. So it's the way of the world in a lot of things, is that now you have this tool in your box where you can be one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one. And the touch points are much, much greater than they ever were before. And I think that pervades, certainly a lot of industries, and a lot of these types of offerings have gone in a similar way.
Yeah, I think the drugs are going to come in and be a big thing. I think the Ozempics, the GP1s. We was at an investment firm recently, wasn't we? And they was talking about some of their big investments that were going to go into these type of weight loss, appetite suppressants, those type of things. I think they're just going to get better and better. It might be like a vitamin pill that you take in the morning that suppresses people's appetite, that type of stuff. I reckon I can see it going in that direction, and then all of a sudden, what obesity might not be a thing. It could switch the other way, couldn't it? I reckon you could have these Ozempic tablets for kids, and really we are fighting against our own innate being, aren't we? We're sort of cave people, ready to gorge when we can, and we're having to use a lot of willpower when there's an abundance of food, and especially when there's a lot of psychological manipulation to make you buy certain things. There's high sugar, high salt, high fat foods that are very palatable. We're going against it's not working, is it? Globally, we've got more health and well-being services, people, and everything's there, but people have never been 75% of people are overweight or obese. Childhood obesity is huge, so we're losing the battle, aren't we, James, in that sense?
But I think it's very similar to what we were talking about on Wednesday. Was this in regards to social media, screen time? People are on their phones. Actually, it was Monday. It wasn't Wednesday. But the algorithms are there to create this addictive situation where you're kind of there. You're triggered by stuff that comes up, and I think the food industry have done a very similar thing to make you addicted to certain foods. The flavor profile, the additives that they put in it to make you want to eat more of it. So all of these things have been designed to keep you consuming a particular thing. And it's all done sort of subliminally. It's not sort of blatantly obvious that they're there. They're just these kind of little insidious little additions that have been slipped in underneath the radar, that kind of we're blundering through life thinking, this is just me. This is my personality type. I can't control my eating. I've got no willpower. I've got this, I've got that. So, but there's always this question about why some people can keep their weight at a particular level, and then others are allowing it to sort of just go out of all control. That there's a level of genetics there. That's not to kind of say, well, you're a slave to your genetics, but there's a certain element to that. But also, it's a personality type, it's your character, your upbringing, lots of different factors that are in there. But certainly you cannot deny the fact that there are these additives in food that make it more addictive. And as I said, that kind of parallel with what's going on with screen use as well. So the system is conspiring against you to an extent, but then it's what we can do about it.
Yeah,
so,
I
but
can't see that
absolutely to your point,
system
as MPEG,
changing. Can you, James? I can't see the
well,
system.
there has to be this level of autonomy that we can go, well, actually, you know what? I know what's going on. I have an awareness of what's happening around me, and it's now what I choose to do with that information. It's the worst situation is to be in, you know, in a situation where you don't know, or you think you know, but actually you're not completely in the loop. But like I've said this to clients, and you will have said it as well, there's no magic pill, there's no magic bullet. As Zempeg, if they come out with a pill form, which is coming, that could be the magic pill.
Yeah.
And people would so much rather take a pill than have to go through the sweat, blood, and tears of the traditional set. If they can get a similar result, if not better, then they're going to pop a pill.
Yeah, even testosterone, it'll be, you know, it'll be suppressants of appetite. Then it'll be testosterone, which is very popular now, especially in the high performance space. So I guess genetic engineering will be not far away. I know the guys from DeepMind are sort of decoding the genome, and they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So maybe you'll be able to choose from, you know, choose your baby, how you want them, how tall you want them to be, you know, what you want them to happen. You might be able to switch off fat storing genes and things like that. So I guess sort of like a gorilla that does, you know what I mean, that eats grass and is ripped and muscular. I think it's going to go that way in terms of, you know, human bodies. And then as soon as it goes like that, you don't see like gorillas doing press ups and stuff, do you really? So I think the whole gym industry could potentially fall down because you won't need it. You'll already be
fascinating.
Ripped.
And I think there's this sort of thing around personalized medicine and kind of genomics as well, that we're now sort of in a situation where we have a level of you know, autonomy over what it is that we take. And again, with these products being sort of more readily available. John Wick.
It will be like John Wick,
It will be like John Wick.
But you're right, James. It will be very individual. It will be, you know, people taking your bloods. Then it will get to the preventative stage where you're born like it. You're genetically engineered from birth. Yeah. But in the meantime, you'll probably be able to like check your bloods and eradicate. They reckon they're going to be able to eradicate, you know, diseases and things like that. I think that's a logical way to go. That's where AI is going to be able to just really move things very, very fast. Yeah. And the guy from OpenAI thinks it's going to go that way. So it's super exciting in terms of health. I think people will end up living probably you'll see the first person to 150 in the next 100
definitely
years.
Within our lifetimes, you'll see that. And
you can sort of see in that age thing being pushed back, can't you?
Yeah, and there's this kind of situation where we're potentially reaching this longevity escape velocity, that the way in which science or medical science is progressing, that potentially we're going to get back more than a year. So for each year you live, you're getting back more than a year. So you're sort of extending lifespan that way. And you'll get a situation where you can have sort of 3D printed organs, or, you know, even sort of drugs that will replicate. So we've talked about these systems in the body, these processes that have become sort of suppressed as we've lived cozier, more comfortable lives. They get sort of suppressed and shut down. So any kind of adversity, we've talked about this process where the body will increase its strength and kind of longevity, that through those kind of processes of adversity, you got sort of things like senescent cells that potentially have gone bad, and you get this process called apoptosis, where there's kind of cellular death or autophagy, that these processes can be created by fasting, so being in a fasted state, but they're now coming up with these kind of senolytics that you can take to actually cause that to happen, but artificially. So it's like you don't have to go through even the hardship of just not eating for sort of 24, 78 or 72 hours, that actually you can now take a pill that will cause the same effect.
You can imagine the resistance in the health and well-being industry from this, can't you? The resistance is going to be so heavy. I guess obviously people have got vested interest business-wise to be able to manage their clients. There's a bit of ego in there as well, isn't there, to feel like you're the hero who wakes up at 5 a.m. and does your hour workout, and you want to do it the natural way. But I get it. I just think that the tech, the science, I think it will be able to manipulate your body to be able to move in that direction. Even if you've read a book called Blue Zones, which sort of does the research on the places around the world where you've got the highest concentration of centurions, is that what they're called? People that live to 100 and beyond?
Centenarians.
So none of them go to the gym.
Yeah.
Not one pump weights and lift go gym. They're like walking, majority plant-based, swimming potentially in America, but none of them are like pumping iron.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's completely bad, but from that research, they're not doing
Dan Buettner was the Blue Zones guy.
The Blue Zones
guy. But again, there's so you've got lots of different kind of factors there. You've got environmental, you've got cultural, obviously, in terms of diet and, what your kind of ancestors were eating.
Yeah.
What's the biodiversity, what's readily available to you, if it's been imported or if it's been, genetically modified, etc. So there's lots of different factors. But certainly, I mean, just things like the end caps of chromosomes, that once those start to sort of deplete through attrition and aging and all that sort of thing, that now they can start to regrow the telomere length. And, you've got this this enzyme telomerase that can be, again, you can increase that through things like exercise and those sort of adverse conditions. But again, if there's a drug that will then increase, so in terms of longevity, that immaterial of what your lifestyle was like up to that point, if you can create a situation where you can increase the length of your telomeres just by taking an injection or a pill, then lifespan can then be exponential.
So that leads us on to the food industry. We might as well quickly switch on to that. So we know that people are going to live longer. The whole coaching thing is probably going to be more, AI, personalized, genetic engineering, genetic biomedicine. Biomedicine is going to be huge. It's already big. All of the, the suppressants of appetite, the testosterone stuff, that's just going to get bigger and bigger. So that whole industry is going to transform. What's going to happen to the food industry, James? How's that going to play out?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So you take, for example, we had the co-founder of Fuel on, didn't we? And that was a really interesting conversation, that you've now got, a product that is nutritionally balanced and complete, which is what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
And,
it's
easy to consume. It's, it's readily available. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to plan, meal or a menu or anything, that it's just easy to engage with. You can get it pre-made. So it's in a bottle, it's straight down, takes no thought process whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes in terms of the convenience of it. Then you've got this whole kind of experience of eating. the sensual side of it, of actually chewing something, what that does to the brain.
Yeah.
So you've got, ghrelin, feeling fuller, for example, and just through the act of chewing, that then starts that signaling pathway to say that I'm actually eating something, and that then signals to the brain that you've eaten, you're satiated. Whereas if you're sort of drinking a shake or whatever form that takes, are those mechanisms going to be the same? So it's all these kind of elements to factor in, but whether there's then something in that product that sort of tricks the brain to then make you think you're fuller. So very much like a Zempeg is working on those areas of the brain that make you desire food. People are reporting that they are lacking, or it's the desire to eat is being reduced. So their need to eat is reduced. So it's all these mechanisms that are kind of being addressed. So, something that maybe had a kind of an Ozempic type sort of quality in there that was then put into the food stuff could then allow people to, once they have eaten, feel satiated. So you've got leptin and ghrelin, these two sort of hormones that kick in. These sort of signaling pathways, again, that tells the brain that you are actually full. You don't need to keep eating. And the speed in which you eat is all a factor. And as I said, how much you chew. So it's fascinating, mate, where this is going to go to enable people to, again, take agency over their own health and to choose which product they go for.
I think it will be more like genetically modified food, vertical farming, artificial protein sources. I just, something in me, I'm a meat eater. I just can't see the long-term future of rearing and killing animals. I just can't see. I know people get very emotional about this, and I get it. I just can't see that being the future. I think we're probably going to create some sort of artificial protein source, which
there's
exactly
already lab grown. There's already lab grown meat, fish. Then you've got, insects that is being sort of banded around, that we're all going to have like sort of, snacking on locusts and, high density protein and,
people take this very badly though, James. This is is an emotional topic for people. And I'm a meat eater. I do like a steak, which I rarely have anyway. I would rarely buy a steak. I'd only have it if I go to a restaurant. But would I kill that animal? I wouldn't personally. I couldn't do it.
No. And if you saw the process that it went through to get to your plate, you could kind of argue maybe you'd think twice about it.
If you give me a healthy alternative that there obviously are, then I just think that's going to be the future. I think that's where we're going to go. It's just going to be more efficient, more humane, and I tell
you what, mate, what will happen is, as soon as the price or the cost of producing this, once it becomes mass produced, once they perfected the process of growing meat in a lab, then it'll become more mainstream, and people will get weirded out about it because it was never a sentient being. It was never alive. But at the end of the day, if the mouthfeel is exactly the same, the flavor profile is exactly the same, but just hasn't had to go through the suffering and, again, with the carbon footprint and the impact on the environment. It's like anything, it'll probably only be a decade and it'll become widely accepted that that's just how it is now. And if there's no alternative, if there isn't, or, if there's a groundswell of opinion that causes this thing to come into existence, then it'll just be accepted. You look through where we are now to where we were 5-10 years ago. There's so much that now has just become accepted as a norm when it was massively pushed back against. We were talking about the Industrial Revolution, of the printing press. They thought that would be the downfall of man. If you didn't have this situation where people were training for years and years and years to scribe beautifully these manuscripts that now could be mass produced within minutes. where that was going. I mean, so we've always had this situation in whatever shape or form.
I think so. Yeah.
There's always going to be pushback against,
Yeah, so
progress.
I think eating at the moment is more of it's become a bit of an inconvenience, but like we said with James Collier from Huel, there is an experience part of eating, which is important, a community part, which I think potentially, if we're liberated by tech, could come back. It's just that eating out at the moment so expensive that not many people are eating out anymore, but the actual process of each individual going to a supermarket, bringing the food back, cooking it themselves is a very inefficient process. So it is better if there are, I can see sort of restaurant hubs of community, eating venues, which are like restaurants, but they're more community eating venues, which are just much more efficient, and you probably pay
they're
like
trying
a
to
monthly
create
subscription.
experiences. Yeah, I think they're trying to create like an eating experience, as opposed to going there just going through the motions of ordering, eating. I think you're right. I think if they can create something that is an event, you're going there not just to eat, but to interact and have something, and then the food is almost secondary to the community.
And if it's on a monthly subscription, James, because no one wants to pay £20 a meal, do they?
No,
realistically, on a regular basis, or whatever.
But then look at
is,
meal boxes. You've got Gusto, you've got HelloFresh, you've got all these companies that have been created around the sort of paint by numbers cooking. That there's very little wastage because everything's been measured out. There's still that element. I mean, depending on who you go for in terms of how much cooking you need to do. So there's certain ones. Again, there's a vegan one that are called Planthood, that everything comes, all your sauces are in a ready-made sachet, and maybe you've got to, boil some potatoes or cook a few sort of veg, and then you've got this so it's very, very easy, but you've got a pretty good meal at the end of it. So, but there is that interaction, there's that, feeling like you've made it, that sense of achievement at the end of it, and literally all you've done is follow a recipe card. So, all of these things are there. You can see how these businesses have been created around that need, that there's still that want to be able to do it yourself. But, if you follow the details, you can have a kind of restaurant quality meal at the end of it, but you've cooked it yourself and at a fraction of the price.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see the big community hub, massive restaurant type places that could take off, like all robotics, cooking stuff, and there's much more community, and you're paying literally cost price, so it's cheap as chips to eat out on a monthly basis. So I don't know when that will be, but I can just normally things either trying to get easier, cheaper, quicker, more convenient, add in the social. So I think potentially that's where that's going to go on the food stuff. But convenience is something like what Huel's doing. I can see more convenience food being a thing at the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of one's industry, education, James, where do we see education going? Well, so starting from schooling, we've got AI, ChatGPT. All of these things are going to have a massive effect on schooling. We don't need to memorize stuff anymore. We're probably going to have Neuralink chips in our brains downloading information in real time. So where's that going, James, on the education side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge thing to overhaul, isn't it, when you look at the traditional model of education?
Yeah.
But again, I think it'll be driven by technology, driven by the need, and it has to adapt. It has to change. It cannot continue in its current form. But then you look over, again, the last 15, 20 years, how much education has changed. But now I think it probably will need to change even quicker because of the acceleration due to AI, ChatGPT. There will need to be an acceptance of it to know that it exists. You can't change the fact that it is now in the world, but it's what you do with that technology. And it should free kids up to become even more adept at other things. It's stuff that we haven't even thought about yet that's going to be a skill for them.
Yeah, we don't even know the industries yet, do we? We have
no idea where this is going to go. But you think of the necessity of where we are environmentally, like sort of carbon capture, for example. And there's the X prizes that millions of dollars are being offered up for groups to come up with solutions to climate change, as I said, carbon capture, how to solve the problems that we're facing. And, I think all of these AI models, the LLMs, are going to allow people to get much more focused and take the noise out of other stuff that may have distracted them to actually focus on these real world issues.
Yeah.
So there's huge amounts of positivity to come out of these technologies that are coming, that are just going to, again, connect with the human brain, that this kind of this hybrid integrated system that just makes us into uber humans that can figure this stuff out.
And more personalized, James, like we said, with food and medicine. I think education as well is going to be geared towards how you learn, whether you're, the auditory, kinesthetic learners. What's the other one? Can't remember. There's three.
Yeah, so you've got the visual, auditory,
or the kinesthetic learner. So I think these AI models are going to be much more geared towards your brain, your interests, how you learn, the speed of how you learn, what you need to learn, because you might not even need, these things might be able to do things for you. So it might just be a creative process where you're just doing it for fun. Who knows if those jobs are going to be necessary, if you're going to need to do them. They're going to be very specific potentially, but this learning experience might just be a creative endeavor for humans. Could be just fun. It won't be like sort of sat down having to pass exams. That might be something of the past, won't it? Yeah, so there's Sam Altman and some of the other ones in the research paper I'm doing are just saying, look, these things are going to surpass our intelligence. Actually, AGI systems are going to really be able to do things that we can't at crazy speed. So we're going to have to allow that to happen and then build a society that we can still survive and thrive and live in abundance, but without having to potentially learn in the same way. So that if anybody's out there, you got some ideas on education, just let us know. What do you think is going to happen? We got John West on the web software. So again, let us know, John, what's happening in that area. We can see that these AI models again are being able to write code. I don't know if it's as equally as good as a human at the moment, but it's probably going to get there, isn't it? Where it's going to be able to create its own code, write it, and those type of things in terms of software development is going to change, or the AI agents and things that are coming out. So this stuff, a human's going to be removed from here, James. Is this where it's looking to go?
Well, it's fascinating when you think about, cars now with the amount of technology they've got built into them. You can take your hands off the wheel now, and you've got sensors that will tell you, where you are in the road, where the white lines are. It'll keep you within that. It'll brake for you. So, this safety element now, that it's still a situation where you've got a human there as the first line of defense, but you've got the mechanisms there to kind of back up, which will take over if you kind of fall short. So, it is fascinating. So John says there's a lot of potential to use AI for education, but we're not using it because of easier money and using it for marketing and other purposes, at least for now. But
Yeah,
I
I
think it's going
agree.
to permeate through education massively. There may be a bit of a lag. I think maybe there's still this resistance that we've got to keep it to its kind of current form. But that's where the purity is, the kind of, the purists of education, that it should be about the classics and all that sort of thing. Yes, absolutely. But like you said, I think there's going to be so much more emphasis on the creativity, because the analytical stuff can be done elsewhere. That can be done literally faster than you could possibly think that information will be created. But in terms of the creativity, the arts, and certainly performance arts, there's going to be even more emphasis on that, the need for that kind of human interaction, that grounding element. I think that we all still need as a human society, to make sure that there's still provision for that it's not just, AI generated in that respect, but there's still that human to human contact.
And there's obviously going to be a lot of resistance, James, isn't there? Because there's a lot of vested interest in old ways of doing things. There's a lot of money involved in old ways of doing things. And when there's tension in a system, that's where money can be made sometimes. And if tech is creating so much of abundance and getting rid of the tension areas, then it leaves us a little bit exposed, isn't it? We're going to have to figure out how we create a society that can work in abundance, and we've got the infrastructure to make it work without having to rely on getting a job, if that job could be done better by someone else, or we could automate the whole thing. So there's lots of other things that are important, like you said, going back to nature, going back to community. But if we automate some of the mundanity, then these type of things can be done. And talking about mundanity, we'll go into industries like law, accountancy, some of these admin type huge industries. We would think they would be prime for automation, wouldn't we, James? I think I don't know how long it will be. I guess at the moment, obviously, there's a fear of getting it wrong, so you need a lot of human input. But what do you think, James? Do you think those type of industries, if it's just text in and being able to rationalize, you can imagine those are going to go, aren't they, eventually?
I think once the idea that ChatGPT is still fallible, that it's not 100%, that it's still scraping the web and collating and still learning, that, if it's still seen as not 100% reliable, and people who are in that industry making these checks and going, well, that's not accurate, that's not right, that's, it's cocked up there, that once that's eradicated, once the learning is surpassed people that have been in that industry for 20, 30, 40 years, however long,
which you can imagine it happening, can't you? If you train ththese AI agents and
and quicker than you can possibly imagine. But going, for example, for the legal industry of having a contract, for example, running it through ChatGPT and just saying to them, right, I want you to pick loopholes in this contract. Where am I being exposed? Where are the areas that I should be really concentrating on? Where is it punitive? Where could I fall down in terms of the small print? And it'll find it for you.
In an
Whereas
instant,
ordinarily you would have had to have gone to a lawyer, you would have had to have gone somebody that's knew law speak, and because the terminology is such that the layman doesn't necessarily understand, the clauses are there, these things that can be now highlighted within seconds. That will scan that document, it'll say, actually, you need to be aware of that, ask about this, ask about that. And ordinarily you would have had to have paid a pretty penny for something like that from a lawyer, and maybe you had to wait a couple of weeks whilst that was then being drawn out, analyzed, etc., which would have that cost associated with it, that now you could pump it into ChatGPT and within seconds and free could give you a very clear idea as to, what that contract was all about.
Yeah.
And again,
ChatGPT is a baby, isn't it, James? It's only just
the beginning.
Come out. I uploaded like 1,000-page PDF government doc the other day and asked it questions, and it was incredible. I also sent to an estate planner. They were saying, okay, how can you beat inheritance tax? And we was having a conversation, and I sent them back a 10 bullet point view of this person who had inherited 100 million, and how would you protect it from your children. And this thing just pumped out some things, and even the estate planner said that's good, and I did it in 5 seconds. It's
and
how good is this gonna be, James? It's gonna be good, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just text, isn't it? If you can just smash text together, and it's getting better at predicting things. I can just see all of your apps will be connected with AI, all of your business transactions, all of your accountancy will be done in real time, and it will be sent off to the government in real time. I just
then you get back into the healthcare side of things, where you've got injectables or any sort of technology that can be put underneath the skin that's regulating, skin temperature, core temperature. If your core temperature fluctuates, it will then inform your GP, or a smart pill that you've taken that will then, report back to your GP or, whoever your specialist is, that I'm detecting that the pH levels have changed, that, all these things that are going on that you will have no idea are happening, but it can be sending data to your doctor to say, look, there's this going on, needs to be investigated. So in terms of disease prevention, things like cancer, or even an aneurysm in the brain or anything like that will pick up the furring of the arteries, it's undetectable until either you go get tested or something happens, that it'll be able to see stuff off of the pass.
Yeah.
So, the reasons that people die can be prevented through early detection. So anything that's, implanted that will give that data, and that's already there. This is already here now. It's not science fiction, it's science fact.
And it's so early. The data is a huge thing. That's what all of these things are doing, aren't they? They're just gathering data, crunching it, creating algorithms, and they're being able to predict stuff for the future. I think the finance industry as well, James, is similar, obviously, to accountancy, to the law industry, but finance is huge. But is it just going to be algorithm battles on the stock market? Because who's going to need humans trying to predict things when you've got these very sophisticated algorithms?
Markets are very much influenced by human behavior and human emotions. From the markets themselves, market forces, to people investing in those markets. You'll know that people that succeed in investment have a very clear idea as to what their goal is, and won't be influenced by the fluctuation of the markets. It's a long-term strategy. And it's people that are sort of pulling their money out and putting it back in and reacting to what's happening in the markets don't tend to do well. So if you take that element out, that you've just got an agent that will do that for you, it'll go, it won't react in a human way. So if you give over agency to an algorithm or something that's doing your investments for you, you say, well, actually push that button, that amount of money's there. That agent then takes over, and it can see what the markets are doing. It's got all the historical perspectives that it can say, actually, I know that at this point of the year that's fluctuated. I can see, I've now got access to the reports for this particular business, so I can see how they're doing. I know the trends, etc., etc. And it would just go, this is fine.
They're doing it already, aren't they? They've got these these systems that they're using. I know with big data, they're making huge predictions on random things. So I just see this becoming just more and more sophisticated. I don't know if it's just going to be concentrated into smaller and smaller hands, because the people that have got who knows, is it going to be the people that have got the money and the firepower to be able to get enough people to create these systems, or is it going to be some kid in his garage potentially, because now he's got access to all of these different things on
and
the
doesn't
internet.
have the closed thinking that
Yeah.
potentially a different generation, it's like anything is possible,
He could
and they're
test
not
something,
encumbered,
create
they're
something.
not weighed down. They're not weighed down
Quantum
by the
computing, all of this weird cosmic stuff. It could just be mind blowing, couldn't it? For us, could be mind blowing. So things like marketing, like a lot of companies spend more on marketing than they do developing their products, don't they? Nowadays, marketing's huge in every single company. Not so much on, it's a lot of word of mouth on some of the other companies, the ones that you need, like accountancy, which is, fantastic for them. But in other industries, there is a lot of sales. So the personal brand thing has become quite big because people are maybe losing a lot of trust in big corporations. But how do we see that going, James? Because we're using ChatGPT. People are using it to write articles. The creative stuff that I did today took me literally 10 seconds. This is the new ChatGPT 4 image generator that I just tested, and it's amazing.
Stunning, mate. Stunning. I look
It's
almost good.
I look like a Hollywood movie star. So yeah, test it out on. I don't know if it's on the paid version of ChatGPT, but it is really good. It is really good. So those type of things. Are we going to know what to believe in, James? How are we going to differentiate? For us, we thought to do live because we're trying to create some longevity maybe for ourselves in terms of like, this is real, this is authentic, this is interaction. It's harder to create, isn't it?
Yeah.
Through AI.
But then before long, there's going to be an avatar of you, there's going to be an avatar of me, and the two will respond to each other, so that there will be a conversation. It's at the moment you'll be able to tell. I don't care what anybody says, you can still tell if that is the case, whether this thing
we're not there yet,
happened in reality.
We're
not there yet. But that's not to
away
say we won't be there.
Yeah. Like video
and the
production.
way in which you interrupt each other and the nuances and all that kind of thing.
The artwork's getting really good now. I just don't think with that, we're not there yet. And it's going to come down to taste, I think, in terms of personal taste, style. That's where humans are going to have the edge. This stuff can create stuff wherever it knows if it looks good. Some of the subtleties is where humans are going to come in. But
I think in terms of marketing, marketing's always about, pattern interrupt. It's always about, getting attention.
Yeah.
And, now that we know, and there's going to be, again, this kind of hockey stick curve that you've got, with the advent, it's still so new.
It's so new, yeah.
AI, ChatGPT, it's still that people I know about ChatGPT, and seeing that image that you created is still like taking me aback. It's like, Jesus, so good.
The speed. So there's this. The speed
it's incredible. So we're at that kind of inception point, and we're still amazed by it, still in wonderment. So there's still that pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And there's also the fear around it. So people are kind of feeling triggered or it's not real and you've cheated and all that sort of thing. So maybe at the moment there's still that need for the authentic message that's coming, in terms of marketing, advertising, that people want the story. They want to see people doing human things, helping people out, being kind, being vulnerable, being open. And certainly in the sort of celebrity sphere of a celebrity doing something which is absolutely a normal human response, but because they're celebrity, it makes it seem like, oh my God, they're this person, even they have helped somebody out in that situation, whereas it could have just been a normal human thing to do. But because of who they are, it's taken into a different sphere. So I think with marketing, there's this a little bit of jaundiced view, this pessimism that surrounds it, that am I trying, are you trying to sell to me? I'm going to take it that you are until I'm proven otherwise. And maybe it has to kind of get us drawn into the story and the performance so that we almost forget that we're being sold to, because it's very much about being in the moment, in the experience. So I know that Apple have done one recently for their, I think it's their 4.0 AirPods, created like a 15-minute film, not a a 90-second advert or a 30-second or a 60-second advert. This is something that draws you in so that you can actually be looking at the theater of it, and then you're forgetting that actually it's about AirPods, but they've just shoehorned it in so that it is there, but it's really about the performance, how kind of visceral the feeling that you're getting. It's that
and I think there'll be one says transformational education first and then AI. I have to elaborate on that one because it is depending on what you learn, isn't it? Just not how you learn it through AI, it's what it's going to be teaching you. I just think as well, James, there'll probably be like a content fatigue, because now this thing can speed up the amount of content that goes out. Then you're going to get an influx of a heavy amount of content. People will get fatigued, and then things go full 180, don't they? Then it's going to come back to people wanting human experiences. People still want to have a handmade human painting, but maybe these are going to be creative endeavors that are maybe high value because they're rare. Because people are not really doing. You could replicate it, but you want a handmade painting by somebody and people will pay like top dollar for it. But if we automate some of the other industries, like we said, with housing, food, education, if we create a baseline society, then the only reason we are marketing, James, is to get access to something else, aren't we? We're trying to sell something so we can have money, so then we can access other things. If we got rid of certain industries and we didn't need the money and we had the access, then maybe then the marketing will sort of balance out. So what do you think about the housing industry, James? Where is housing going? There's obviously a lot to do with prefabbed housing, modular housing. If you've seen some of the videos from China, that they can build like a hotel in 3 days.
That's incredible.
I saw one in Scotland, which is a 3D printed house, which was unbelievable. So the concrete's going round on this massive 3D printer. It's very old school, humans putting bricks on top of each other. So we've got the land issue. If we can sort out land distribution issue, then realistically, you would think house building would be modular, quite easy. Would you say, James?
Yeah. So you've got, the outer shell is one thing, and then you've got all the sort of first, second fixes internally. And it's whether those can be automated to that sort of extent, because obviously there's decision makings, or if something's put somewhere, then it's not right, you can then kind of change it. So, I'm not sure kind of how that's all going to work, but certainly the outer shell you can see, and I've seen those 3D printed houses, or, modular. My brother built a house up in Scotland, probably 15 years ago, I think, and got the house imported. It came from Scandinavia. It was then erected on site, and the build time was halved. Very, eco-friendly. It was very much with that in mind, sort of thermo dynamic heating and all that sort of thing. That incredibly eco-friendly, and now modern houses are being made with that in mind to be, environmentally friendly. So
you can imagine the future, can't you, James? I think, spending your whole life trying to pay off a house, you're going to think for an advanced civilization is going to be quite a primitive thing to do. So I just don't think future humans are going to be worried about housing too much. They're probably going to be in these big, creative experience hubs. Housing will be somewhere where you go and stay, but you're probably going to want to travel and be in different places, and transport's going to be like hyper loops, and everything will be linked together. And you might not even have a one single home anymore. It might not just be a thing. You might be able to just book somewhere. You have these food hubs, you have accommodation hubs, and it'll all be high tech, and you'll be able to maneuver around to different places. So I think it's hard for people to think now because it's so entrenched into our culture, the housing thing, isn't it? It's such a big part of everybody's lives, but I just can't see advanced civilizations moving.
But when you think about how disposable we've become generally in terms of consumption, there's not much that lasts anymore. I think it's not a great business model to make things that last a long time.
Yeah.
So I think with like car ownership, for example, as soon as we go automated or autonomous vehicles, I should say, that just turn up when you need them, they drive to your house. Nobody needs to deliver them. They'll take them off to a charging station. If they need maintenance, there'll be a maintenance port that it drives itself to. You've got smart contracts that, will do all that for you in terms of, cryptocurrency in the smart contract sort of sphere, that nothing will need to exist as it exists at the moment. And I think ownership will change beyond recognition, as you say, that you're kind of going
James, on that
almost nomadic, that, you can have a pod or something wherever you're going to. You're not tied to one particular place. If you need to up sticks and move, maybe the pod is made to your spec before you arrive there, that everything is. So I think we're sort of becoming less attached to things, that they are changing much more regularly, that you're not really holding on to stuff like we used to. It doesn't have the same level of meaning necessarily. That actually will probably change our attitude to being in one specific place, as opposed to, as I said, more nomadic.
Yeah, I think you're right. Which is a bit of a 360, isn't it? Going back to our nomadic roots. I think there will be a lot of localized production. So things are not, tomatoes are not flown halfway around the world to get onto your plate with the vertical farming stuff. So it'll be a lot of localization, but I think people potentially will be definitely more nomadic. I can see it going that way. It makes more sense. And like you said, with the cars, I use Zipcar in London. I just use an app. I get and use it when I need it. I don't have to pay for any petrol. The petrol card's in there. I don't have to pay for car insurance. I don't have to pay for MOT. And I just check on my app, see which one's around. It's just so easy, James. And if you can do that at scale, at zero marginal cost, it's just going to get cheaper to the point if it could be free. Once it's automated as well, even easier. So I can just see that industry is going to be access driven, improve like the public transport, improve the smaller vehicles that go around where you can just log in with an app. Why would you need car ownership? Then all of a sudden car insurance industries go, don't they? All of the insurance industries just disappear then.
But like, I don't know how long they've been around for, but let's say sort of like 5-6 years ago, could you have imagined these scooters, these electric scooters that are, parked up all around major cities, that with an app, you can just go there, pick one up, drive it around for the amount of time, as long as you take it back to the port, that it then stops charging you. But, all of these things that have been automated, could you even imagine it? And now you just accept it because they're everywhere. Whereas before there would have been legislation that came in, said it would be hazardous, A, for pedestrians, B, for traffic on the roads, that these things weaving in and out, that there's no way that would be allowed legislatively. That now are just accepted. You see people weaving around, it is what it is. So that's another indication of how things are changing. There's always initial skepticism, resistance, but
and in that transition, James, the business models are going to have to change. The culture is going to have to change. People's mindset around transitioning. There's going to be, like we said from the beginning, there's just going to be so much resistance, isn't there, to holding on to old ways of doing things or opinions about what's right and wrong. But I think this train's left the station, James, isn't it? We're going in this direction, and it's just a matter of time. I think it's just
resistance
a matter of time.
Is futile, mate. Resistance is always futile in that respect.
Yeah, we're going to have to adapt. We have to adapt mentally, because I can see business models definitely changing. We can see the subscription models coming into place. It looks like in the near future that potentially the middle class could be hit quite hard, and then there's probably going to be a low end market, and then there's going to be a luxury market. Short term, long term, it could be abundance for everybody, but we're going to have to see how we go with that. But it's exciting, but it's very scary when you haven't got any economic input. That's the problem, isn't it? Because there's no safety net. I know Sam Altman from ChatGPT is talking about universal basic income to actually just pay people, give them a chance. And then there's the upskilling. We're going to have to upskill people into different areas. We're not sure what areas they're going to be yet, and just be there for any job displacement, and maybe actually reinvent the word job and what it means to hold your identity around your work. Because if you don't need to do it, and you could do it efficiently, and it could be automated by a robot, then maybe we need to question what we're doing, James, and we'll see. But things are changing fast, aren't they? You couldn't imagine telling somebody in the early 1900s there was going to be FaceTime and the internet. What would they have said to you then? It would just be mind-blowing, wouldn't it?
You'd be committed.
I think you would be committed, wouldn't you? Yeah, it would be insanity, really. So, but the insanity is reality now, and we just have to move with the times and try and help people get through it. That's what we're here to do. Okay, James.
So raison d'etre.
Exactly. We'll leave it for there today. We could go on. I'm sure there's other industries, and if there is other industries, let us know, and we can thrash them out in a discussion in the future, because exciting and scary for people, understandably, but let's adapt emotionally and figure this out. Survival of the most adaptive. Let's hold on to your seats. It's going to be an interesting.
Hold on to your pants, everybody.
Here we go. We go. But thanks, guys. Thanks to Juan and John.
Thanks, Juan. Yeah.
All the J's. John, James, Juan.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon, guys.
Friday is J Day.
Have a nice weekend.
Much love, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.